Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Fischer from Cascade Rail Foundation, and today is November 13th, 2025. Along with some of my usual cohort of friends, today we have a really special guest, Russ Segner. And Russ worked for the Milwaukee Road in the real estate development industry and was instrumental and worked in a very interesting project where the Milwaukee Road developed an auto unloading facility in Kent, Washington. So I am going to share my screen, and hopefully I've done that. And here we go from the beginning. There we are. Okay. Well, Russ, welcome. Now, a couple things I need to say. First, I have that exact same t-shirt, and I got mine at Costco. So welcome today. And today we're going to be talking about the automobile marshaling complex in Kent, Washington. So how did a nice fellow, first tell us a little bit about yourself, Russ, where you went to school, graduated, how you ended up out here, and how you ended up working for the Milwaukee Road Land Company.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in Missouri, Kansas City, graduated from the University of Kansas City, which is now part of Missouri University. Um, when I finished college, I knew that I wanted to move to Seattle because I had studied about it in a physical geography class in high school, actually. And so packed up everything and we moved to the West. Um, my first job out here was as a draftsman with a land survey company up in Linwood. And I got that job because I had taken 4 years of drafting in high school. Uh, that was lasted a couple of years, and in that process, I learned an awful lot about land development because we did a number of commercial and residential flats, including utilities and all of that. So when that closed down because of one of the Boeing debacles, I was hunting for a job and answered a newspaper ad for an assistant engineer. And I answered the ad, and it turned out to be the Milwaukee Real Estate and Industrial Development Department. I had I was not an engineer, had no degree in engineering, and that was one of the requirements of that department at the time. But they liked my drawings because I took my portfolio of drawings that I had done and building up these plats and that sort of thing. And so they hired me as an assistant engineer and joined the staff at the White Henry Stewart building up on the sixth floor. And it was a very, very interesting group. The Milwaukee West End was a very small staff, including the law department there and the assistant general manager, Marty Gerlich. We had good relationships down the hall with the traffic department, and we worked an awful lot with the law department and the traffic department in the work that we did in industrial development. We were responsible for leasing industrial buildings that the Milwaukee owned. That included everything from Seattle south to Morton, Washington, and east to Miles City, Montana. So part of my job involved traveling to many of these locations, which was great because I fell in love with the western part of Washington State out in Aberdeen and Hoquiam, and then particularly down in Morton and that area on the old Tacoma and Eastern Railroad. One of the first things that happened to me when I joined the railroad in, I think it was 1968 or so, was that they showed me a desk and so on. And at the time, the manager there, Joe Greer, came in and said, "Here, Russ, this is for you." and he put on my desk a stack of files, must have been 12, 14 inches high. And I thought, what the heck is this? Says, well, look through them and we'll talk about it. Turns out these were all of the files dealing with the acquisition of the Kent Airport. And my job was to finalize the removal of the tenants and the buildings on that property from the real estate point of view. Now, we hired an outside contractor, but together with the building department down in Tacoma, took care of removal of all of the structures on the property. It did not include the 12 acres or so north of the crossing you can see on the drawing there at the very top of the photograph. We subsequently acquired that because we needed to build a pumping station for the stormwater off the property up over the dike into the Green River. And so anyway, that was my first job with the railroad, was to clear this property and get it ready for development.
I just want to just insert quickly that the Kent Airport was a small single-engine blacktop runway used entirely by small private planes. And it had an advantage, Russ, because it was naturally level because it was an airport.
Oh, yeah, it was a great piece of property. The only concern we had was stormwater. And through all my time at the railroad, the property on the west side of what became 167 would flood in the winter. And it was basically, they grew cabbages there. But there was pretty much a floodplain. And this, of course, was before all of the wetlands issues in the state. Otherwise, this property would never have been developed as we did.
Well, we've actually got two developments in this picture. One on the left is our main focus, which is the auto marshaling complex. But let's talk about the image on the right. What we're going to look at it a little bit later, but what are you standing next to in that photograph?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my home layout. I live in Newcastle, and this is a scale S scale. That's 3/16 of an inch to the foot model railroad. It's a logging railroad, and it's narrow gauge. So it combined an awful lot of the interest that I had from my work with the Milwaukee and the areas around Morton and so on. Became quite familiar with an awful lot of the timber companies in the west side of the state, all the way out to Aberdeen, to Hoquiam, and so on. And it is built above my three-car garage. So it's a fairly decent sized room. And it extends also around a portion of the stairway up from the lower part of our family room down below.
All right, let's move on. I've got a few other images to share. Well, but before I leave, Russ, looking at the aerial photograph of the marshaling complex, what are some of the important features that we should be watching for as we go through this presentation?
Well, the acreage is close to 100 acres or so. It's my recollection. And it was designed, it was not designed, but we were able to secure the two tenants. At the north was TS&D. That was the trucking operation that handled all great General Motors products by rail in there. And at the south end, the dark black area was for Convoy Company, and they handled all of the Chrysler and Jeep products that were handled through the facility. The center acreage, some 60 or so acres, we had no particular use for at the time. Subsequently, it was developed and sold off to a variety of companies, including my recollection is one of the early ones. Well, Alaska Copper was one of the early ones moved out of down South Seattle. And Pay and Pack was there in a big warehouse for quite a while. And then my recollection is that the last tenant that I was aware of was the Reynolds Aluminum Company in the middle.
Okay, well, we'll look
Um,
at that. Just as a note, TS&D is the Transport, Storage, and Delivery Company. So let's look at our next image. Oh, it's a commercial. Wouldn't you know? I would stick a commercial
ah,
in our program. Hey, folks, Jonathan Fischer here from Cascade Rail Foundation. Please help us restore the 5057, one of the last Milwaukee Road diesels left. You can donate to the cause on our website, www dot whatever it is dot whatever. So just a quick commercial there. Sorry, Russ. And now, backing up for a minute, this is from the brochure that they used. Explain to me the strategic location of Kent in relation to your customer base.
well, this property was down at South 277th, and so it was south of Tacoma Junction, which is up at the northerly edge of Tunquilla. Tacoma Junction was an important location because it connected with the Great Northern Pacific Coast trackage and the Milwaukee Main Line that came in from Maple Valley and from the east across Snoqualmie Pass. And then everything north, that was at the Tukwila was at the very northerly edge of the valley where a great deal of industrial development was occurring. Andover Industrial Park was to the north and west of this property, and the Milwaukee UP served that Andover Industrial Park down around South Center now. So it had excellent access up and down the main line to Portland and up to Vancouver, uh, British Columbia.
Moving on to the next picture here, this shows the facility, I think, towards the end of its construction, but you'll notice that 167 dead ends in a field with an interchange. So we lose track of how rural it was in the 1960s, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. This was at the very beginning of the development in that area south all the way down to Sumner. And most of it was just open fields. There were quite a bit of it was just pasture land, but a great deal of it was also leased to farmers who grew all kinds of crops. As I mentioned earlier, one of the predominant ones was cabbage. A lot of people don't know that Kent was one of the places where the Milwaukee UP connected to the Northern Pacific Great Northern. There was trackage across the valley in the area where the Justice Center is now built. That property was occupied by Libby McNeil Libby with a vegetable packing plant. And one of the other large tenants there was a ladder company. I can't think of the name right now, but
Howard Manufacturing.
Howard Manufacturing,
Thank you, Alan.
and so on. Was a very interesting area.
We can, on the left, we could see the starting to grow city of Kent in the background. And on the right, Russ, this is that photo that I just took this off of Google Maps yesterday when I was putting this together. But this shows you kind of how there was an infill in that center section. You know, when we look at the picture on the left, there's that center section, and we could see the Binford Auto Wrecking and Alaska Copper and Brass and that big warehouse in the middle, which isn't labeled. All, you know, so it was a way to kind of make some money on the back end because you were able to flip that real estate then, I would imagine, for a decent
Right.
amount.
I was not with the road at the time those were done.
Now,
So,
I just want to back up for, I got to ask this question. So when we look at the trackage in the photo at the left, Russ, didn't you build a model railroad that helped figure out this track configuration?
Well, it's kind of interesting. You notice the access from the property onto 277th. You can see that the entry ramp there was brand new, and it turns out it needed to be relocated from the original alignment uh, because we discovered very quickly that the way they had configured it, really close to 167, the trucks could not make that turn. And so, in order for us to really illustrate the issue, I had brought into the office a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and we laid this out on it. And I used little 1/4 inch pieces of basswood to model the trailers, which were fairly long, and the cab, and just use as an illustration to kind of demonstrate to the various people involved about how that turn needed to be made.
So then the access to 277th was something that the railroad put in to
Yeah,
fix
we
the
had to move
problem that
that, and that was
washed out.
our expense.
Yeah, I saw that in the article.
So,
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but between the marshaling yard and the main line, there's that strip that looks like it used to be. Was that the old interurban trackage that would have been between those
There's
two?
100-foot right of way on the westerly side of the Milwaukee Union Pacific main line,
Oh,
and
okay.
that was occupied. Uh, let's see, that would have been after this, um, by the Metro trunk line that comes north up toward Tukwila,
Oh,
from
okay.
Auburn. And
Oh,
all of that
Jonathan,
was being done about this same time.
okay. That's,
so Jonathan, that
yeah,
photo I added to the program
right. We'll get to
uh,
that. Yeah.
in the yeah, in the first one showing the complex, or you can use this one. In the upper center of the photo is about where I took that, or of the yeah, this photo is where I took that shot of the UP train.
Got it. So now we've got a reference point when we get to that photo.
Right.
So here is, Russ, here is showing you sort of the layout and what did you do to I mean, one of the things, of course, from land use perspective for me is how you got rid of the surface water with this drainage pumping station. How did that all work?
Well, along the access road on the westerly side of the property was a ditch that we uh, constructed when the property was filled, that went north up to a lift station. You can see it, that little black dot right by the river.
Yep.
That's a lift station that lifted the water up over the dike and into the river.
Hmm.
It wasn't any more complicated than that.
Okay.
One of the interesting things, it mentions in the article that they put about a foot or so of fill. I don't think that's correct, because it seems to me that there was like 4 or 5 feet of fill ultimately put on the property. Uh, and I got several visits to the site while that was being done. And I recall standing out in the area where the trucks were coming in. So the Segali company had control of all of the borrow pits in in King County, I think, and they hauled hundreds and hundreds of truck sets. They were the double bottom belly dump trucks. And as they drove into the site, we were standing maybe 30, 40 feet away. You could actually feel the soil underneath your feet move, as it was pretty spongy, actually. And
Yeah.
the pattern was to preload the property with 6 or 7 feet of fill, and let it sit for about 6 months or so while it compressed the soil to the point where it stopped settling anymore. So that was part of the process.
So on the right, we've got again, this was out of the information. I believe this is from the Jerry Schrader collection at Cascade Rail Foundation. And I believe this was part of the opening day sort of promotional material that was available. We'll see Mr. Schrader in a minute. To Russ's point, 350,000 cubic yards of imported fill material, paving 40 acres. And it's interesting, 1,300 autos for convoy, 1,150 autos for transport, storage, and distribution. The Seifert, Forbes, and Berry contribution to the project. Does those names ring any bell with you at all, Russ? Seifert, Forbes, and Berry?
No, not right off.
Okay.
What's the company? Seaford?
Yeah, Seifert, Seifert.
That sort of reminds me of a soils engineering company.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. So just some of the statistical information on this project. It was really quite a project. It's a pretty interesting trackage. This would make kind of an interesting model railroad module, wouldn't it, Russ?
Well, it would, but yeah, anything dealing with auto racks or now the containers consume a great deal of real estate.
They do. It's a good point. Let's move on. So the dedication was on October 1st, 1969, and they ran a special train from the freight house in downtown Seattle, which was right near Stacy Street Yard, because they'd given up their operating rights to Union Station, to the Union Pacific, when they discontinued passenger service. So the train left Seattle, and this is a brochure from it. This is the Jerry Schrader collection. And that's why I got George along, Russ, because this was also the Union Pacific had the opportunity to participate in this project because they were joint owners of the track. Did you ever deal much with the UP people on this or not?
Yes, they did not have a large real estate presence here, uh, but we had a good relationship with them. Uh, they worked and did the switching of the Argo yard and everything on the west side of Marginal Way South, all of that line down to the crossing at Old Highway 99 was switched by the Union Pacific. But in the valley, the Milwaukee was the operating railroad, and we were responsible for all of the operational issues, the maintenance of the track and all of that, and any real estate issues we handled. Several properties were jointly owned, and when the Milwaukee ended its operation and disposed of its assets, a great deal of that property was sold off to the UP, their half interest, Milwaukee's half interest.
So here are a couple of pictures from opening day, and it's interesting to note, sadly, we don't have the names of the attractive models who were in this picture, but we could at least talk about the guys in the stuffed shirts up above. And there's some interesting people up there from left to right. Daniel B. Ward from the state of Washington. And then the second person from the left is somebody named J.C. Kenefick. Why, George, why would I have a Kenefick on a Milwaukee Road train? I thought that was a UP guy.
He was. Kenefick was I guess, sort of the last of the old guard. He was chairman and CEO of UP a little bit later than in this photo, but he was probably along there because since it was dual served facility, he probably had some kind of interest in it, and also as a byline here, UP had what was called traffic rights. not only just rights to run on Milwaukee's trackage, so they could solicit traffic also and jointly serve industries along the Milwaukee.
So thanks, George. And then just to continue with who are in the picture, the man in the center is Curtis E. Crippen, and he was the president of the Milwaukee Road. And then right before the program, we were talking, Russ, about Joshua Green. There is Joshua Green, fourth from the left, and he was 16 days away from turning 100 years old in this picture. So how about them apples, guys?
Yeah, he was an interesting fellow.
Was he? Did you know Mr. Green very well, Russ?
A little bit. We would have annual get-togethers, and particularly an annual Christmas party at the Canlis. We took over the Canlis, which was
Wow.
pretty interesting. And like I think I mentioned to you, for his 100th birthday, since I was in the model road, and I got a kit for an O-scale observation or a business car, and built it with an interior and had it painted and lettered for the Milwaukee, of course, but then I put the name on it, the Joshua Green, and numbered it number 100. And Bob Argue, who was one of the guys in the department with me, had salvaged some of the walnut from the property down at 228th that we owned when we cut down the trees, big maple trees. And he made a base for this car to be located on. So I put track on the base and screwed the car to that base so that it was stable. And we presented it to Joshua Green at the party, and I had wrapped it up in white tissue paper. The thing is, at 100 years old, he was not as steady as you'd like it to be. But he picked this thing up off the dais and held it up in the air, and sort of in an angle that I was really concerned that he might drop the darn thing, but he didn't. And I always have wondered where that car ended up. I'm sure it's in the estate somewhere, or some private guy's got it somewhere.
eBay?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I just had an uncle turn 100, so it's quite an honor to pass that milestone. Just a quick note, the person on the far right, we don't know the women's names, unfortunately. The person on the far right is BYE Luterman, Lutterman, and it looks like he's the guy talking in this picture. This is an article from TMR, the Milwaukee Road magazine, and the photographs are taken by Jerry Schrader, who was at the event that day.
Oh, great. Well, By Letterman was the head of the legal department out in out Lines West.
Okay, well, that would be, so you'd want to have counsel tell people what the deal is.
We had, I think, 5 attorneys in that office, and they were really, really fun to work with. I learned an awful lot from all of them, actually.
You know, we should probably put that quote in italics. Fun to work with attorneys. Let's make a note of that concept. Okay.
Well, they were old school. Warren Plager was the Letterman's second guy.
Okay.
And I recall he came into my office one day, and he sort of sat down on the edge of my desk, and he said, Russ, I want to talk to you about something. I said, what's going on? He says, our blankety blank government has asked us to sign this document. Well, what's it about? Well, this is when they were promoting early on the legislation dealing with equal opportunity.
Oh, okay.
And the paperwork he had in his hand required the railroad to sign an affidavit basically that said that we would obey the law.
Why do you
and Letterman was the old school.
I mean, you're supposed to just obey the law, you know? So.
Yeah. Well, and he couldn't understand. Well, he was outraged that we were asked to obey the law. I
I
Yeah,
thought
got
it
a
was pretty
comment
funny.
about those, I got a comment about those, somewhat, scantily clad ladies.
yeah. Go ahead, George.
So, yeah, so you'll notice the lady's wearing like a mini skirt
With like a
and
conductor stripe thing with a little hat. Yeah, look at these.
yeah, and she's got go-go boots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So that wasn't exclusive to the Milwaukee as far as a PR stunt, if you want to say it that way. But UP used a lot of that too, especially uh, when they brought in the 6900 engine to LA. They had a couple of mini skirted girls out there with go-go boots, and then also I think on one of the probably the last eastbound run to before Amtrak in 71, they were also out there to climb on the engine and help put up things, and then they handed up cake to the engineer and fireman and all that. So, you know,
yeah. Well, and what kind of car is this in the upper right-hand corner? What is that? Is that a Chevy of some sort? Chevy coupe of some sort?
it's a that's a Pontiac Tempest or Le Mans or GTO, probably about 70 or 71.
This was October of 1969, so that would be a new car then. So,
Yeah, so it'd be a 70.
and looks like Russ, looks like we had some live entertainment at the event because it looks like we've got some musicians and Mr. Crippen's business car, the Milwaukee, and the whole ball of wax, right?
yeah.
All
There's
right.
some interesting stories about Mr. Crippen and the
Yeah.
business car.
Oh,
He liked to do quail hunting or pheasant hunting, I guess, maybe both. And that car would often be uh, taken over to Othello, Washington, where he would um, stay for several days hunting.
no. Well, there you go. When you hear stories, you
Firearms on
always
the
got to
property.
go stories about the business car. You always go, uh-oh. But that's a good story. So we can keep going. Um, so the note kind of explains this one. So this is a flat car with a tarp over it, and it's loaded with balloons. So apparently they take the tarp off, and all the balloons must have floated away. And this was taken by Jerry Schrader. And it says it doesn't look right because there's a loaded auto rack full of George, I need your help again. What kind of cars are those? Those look like
Looks like full-size Pontiacs, probably out of Ohio, somewhere
okay,
like that.
okay. Yeah, so it was already in service when they had this grand opening. So here's an interesting Aaron Schwartz, who does a lot of our research at Cascade Rail Foundation, went through the Schrader collection and came up with this. This is just a great letter written by Marty Gerlich. Russ, who was he?
Yeah, Marty Gerlich, he was the general manager on the West End.
Oh, so this is like a letter from the boss then.
Yes, he was in charge.
The 655 White Building. So your offices were in the White Building along with them?
Yeah, White Henry Stewart building.
White Henry Stewart Building. And I certainly want to pass on to you the fine compliments I received from Mr. Crippen and the other members of our railroad, as well as the guests, who were so impressed with the train operation. And so we could see this yellow note from left to right. Mr. Krebs is the conductor. Ed Testo, second fellow, is the engineer. Bob Storley is the fireman. Rich Lowen is the brakeman. And J.W. Schrader, whose collection this is the gentleman. I mean, switchmen were all dressed up for that day. Alan Miller, did you know any of these guys from your time at the railroad?
Oh yeah, and I still have a key that Marty Gerlich gave me to get into the telegraph room at the White Henry Stewart building when I worked up there.
Oh, okay.
I never gave it back to him because I always thought I'd come back there to work again, but they never sent me back to the retail office again.
Here's a couple of names you might remember, Alan. Besides Storley, I think the Valley Owl had Storley, and then the conductor was Ackerts.
Yeah, yeah. Jim Ackerts, I think his name was.
Yeah, so I knew them from interacting with them at Black River when the owl would come over to Black River Yard.
Oh yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I can see some other names in here. D.F. Gallipo is a name I hear from time to time, and
Oh yeah.
people on the copy list back when we would back before we had email and we had to actually send physical copies to people of these important documents. Anyway,
Yeah, Tommy Galpo threatened to fire me twice.
but he never did.
I see Wayne Ferrier on there too.
Wayne Ferrier, yeah, R.B. Heggie,
Yeah,
M.T. Savage, and L.V. Anderson. So whoever they were.
And Marty Gerlich's the one that had that Milwaukee Drover caboose that was a business car.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let's keep rolling along here. So this is an excerpt from 1973 timetable, and it shows West Siding. And West Siding was Alan, that was the name of this in railroad parlance, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, West Siding is where the auto complexes were, and then we had a passing track there, and that's where every night they put all the empty auto racks up there on that pass, and then 262 would pick them up, and I had to waybill them out and hand up all the waybills at the depot at Kent for that stuff.
Okay, so you would work out of the Kent Depot, but then you'd have to go down to West Siding.
Yeah, I had to run down there and check it all the time,
Okay.
and there was a few nights where they were shoving the empties into the siding up there, and the 262 was sitting the other side of the highway crossing waiting to pick those cars up. And I was sitting in the company car writing the numbers down as they shoved them into the siding, and then had to make a flying trip up to the Kent Depot and get everything ready while they were picking the stuff up. And so I was out there hanging the bills while the train was going by the depot.
We'll get to more of that in a second. But Russ Segner, one thing I wanted to come back and mention to you in this thing was one of the advantages that the Milwaukee Road had was they could get these, because back then, 1969, all the cars were made in the Midwest and shipped out here. It's not like today. And so the Milwaukee Road could turn these auto racks around quicker because the Great Northern, it took 2 days in their yard to get them switched to where they needed to go. And we could get the cars turned around faster for the auto companies. So that was one of the strategic advantages that Milwaukee had in this project. So George Foster sent me this picture. George, we looked at where that was on the map earlier. Tell me a little bit about this train.
so I was with a friend of mine that was a captain and male nurse in the U.S. Army at Madigan, and we became acquainted about at a hobby shop, and so we would go out rail fanning, and we pulled up to this location one day in October of '70, and it looks like this was probably train 684, and it looks like they had just made a pickup here, or because it looks like the brakeman had just went inside the cab and they were getting ready to depart. But I was going to say one other note about this. Can't remember it now.
Well, I'll
But
give you a second when I just point out the
yeah,
spotting feature of when do you get a lash up of 4 GP30s with 2 of them being GP30Bs.
yeah. I used to see those at Argo that way. If I got up there, I have a shot of some of those in such a configuration there before the uh, trailer ramp was expanded there. So they were in the kind of in the old roundhouse servicing area with the overhead sanding uh, machine that could go from one track to another if there were multiple tracks there, and and hover over the locomotive while the hostler was filling the boxes with sand.
This is a great shot, George. Thanks for sharing this with us.
Yep.
Dependable transportation. And, and then this is at the other end. Is this up at the north end?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
and the other picture was, this picture's at the south end, this picture's at the
yeah,
north.
that's right at 277th on the south end. This one
Okay,
is just the Milwaukee picture is just south of the bridge before you go to Kent. And so when I started working there, uh, a train called the PSV and then later on called the CSSEZ would have autos there for Kent. So we'd cut off right where that just south of that switch and pull up and throw the switch and shove the loaded cars into there. And then we were pretty much done. It was like come up there, cut off, shove them in, and get the train back together and go your merry way to Seattle.
so I'm just looking at that first auto rack. Are those international harvesters?
Let's see. I don't have my magnifying glass. So.
Because Chrysler, IH, and Jeep Kaiser were with Convoy, and then it looked like the other guys were with TS&D. So anyway,
Yeah, GM products. It was my understanding that BN uh, handled the Ford products across the valley later on. I don't know when that started, but so the UP in Milwaukee had everything that was either GM or Chrysler, I understand, and then maybe by extension the Jeeps and the international products.
okay. So Russ, coming back to you, there's a spotting note in this picture. So the ability to build this site out, you were inside the city of Kent, and utilities were available, but you had to get the power company to relocate these power lines high enough for you?
Well, there was, yeah, some vertical curve issues. I remember the trackage also had the catenary in that location to deal with.
Yeah, here's a picture of it back in 1970 when the catenary was still in place, but by 1978 in this Robert
Yeah,
Johnston photo, that's gone now. So yeah, that would have been a complicating factor. But there was no electrification inside the marshaling facility, was it?
no, no.
Okay, so they would have diesels switch that then. All right, moving along. So Alan Miller mentioned that he worked in Kent, and Alan drew this map. So Alan, why don't I let you explain why this map was so helpful to you while you worked in Kent?
Well, I was on second trick and I had to make the switch list for both the Valley Owl and the UP Kent switcher. And so I had to run down and check West Siding Yard usually a couple of times on my shift. And so I drew this map up when I first started there so I would know what tracks I was inventorying down there. And it's not totally accurate to what was down there, but at least it gives the numbers of the tracks.
Do you have any
I have a,
interesting recollections from your time down there?
Well, I know that when they would set out cars down there, like the Union Pacific, when they would put cars in a storage yard, they would block that gravel road crossing there at the north end. So they put out a message to the UP that they were supposed to cut that crossing, and they cut it just wide enough for a car to squeeze through there. And we had a girl operator working there, and she went through there and it took the door handles off the company car, all but the one on the driver's side. She just got out, picked the door handles up, threw them in the back seat, and went about her business. But
I've got a question for Alan. Uh, Referencing my photo back one frame there, but since you see those units and then you only see box cars behind them, did the UP do switching around Kent and then slough the cars into West Siding so that it was easier to pick up there rather than taking them to Argo? Do you know?
no, I don't know. We had that Kent Road switcher, and they went on duty at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
and they switched west siding, and then they went up to Andover and switched up there. And so I assume they uh, set their Argo stuff out for pickup by one of the mainline trains, I would imagine. But
yeah, yeah. I was just kind of wondering because obviously you don't see auto racks on the head end of the train.
yeah, well,
Yeah, I was
The
wondering that
empties.
too.
Yeah,
that
the
that T
empties.
that TS&D complex, I had to go in there, and there was gates there where the track goes into it. That the train crew would open those gates to go in there and switch. So that's how I would check the yard. I'd park the car down there, and I'd just go through the gate and walk down each of those tracks and inventory the cars. And one night I got caught in there by the security guard, and he wanted to know what I was doing. And I told him that, my job to check those cars every night. So then he told me, he said, well, from now on, you come in through the front gate. And that was way down there by where the frontage road was. So I started going there, and I couldn't raise him. He had a portable TV, and he'd park next to this power pole, and he'd plug his little TV in and sit there and watch TV shows. I could see the glow from his TV in his car, but I would honk the horn, I'd flash the lights, I would scream and yell, and I couldn't get any response out of him. So I just went back to going in through the back way. But I'd been checking that yard for months before he ever came around and found me.
So I just
Sounds
want to
like
make
if you would have had a dispute about that continuing, then you would have had to go to the superintendent of the Milwaukee and have him settle the issue with the convoy.
Yeah, but I didn't want to stir things
You're
up. It was
right.
easier for me to go in the back way anyway. I didn't have to sign a log or anything like that. Just go in there and get my stuff done because Red Melior wouldn't always let me have a lot of time to go check that yard. I'd want to check and say, well, I'll give you 20 minutes, but I need you back here. I think I might have to change a meat. So
Yeah.
I had to check that yard on the fly.
because along with being a clerk, you also needed to copy train orders for the train, right?
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to look at one right now. Here's one. Tell us, Alan, a little bit about this train order and its clearance and who some of these people were.
Well, I think this is for the Tacoma local, and I'm guessing that I even talked to Bob Freeman about this, and he had no recollection of ever copying this order, but he copied it at West Siding, and I'm guessing, and this is purely my speculation, is that they'd already fixed the Tacoma local up to go back to Tacoma Junction at the Kent Depot, and he went down there to West Siding to maybe pick up his train or something, and then the dispatcher realized that he had to set him up with a meet with Second 82. So rather than bust the clearance and have to do all that rigmarole, I think Bob just grabbed the train order pad and some clearances and went down there to West Siding to the phone box and copied the order there. And then that way they could just add it to the orders and didn't have to mess up the Kent one. But that's just my guess as to why he copied an order at West Siding.
Alan, what was Second 82? Was that a scheduled freight or was that?
Second 82 could be any train that was going east at the time.
Oh,
They used schedules, but they weren't uh, uh, mandatory to one railroad or the other.
did they, so occasionally did they issue like a weight order or did they issue a uh, number eight, second 82 is running 20 minutes late or something like that? Did they do that?
Well, they put out a lot of weight orders, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Was the Milwaukee Road after all. So who was Alan, remind me of who Mr. Freeman was and
Oh,
who,
that's
yes,
Bob Freeman. He was operator. His father was also known as Bob Freeman or Robert Freeman. He was a conductor. And then Bob has a brother that's still around, Paul Freeman, and he was a brakeman.
okay, and who was MTS?
Maury T. Savage. He was the
Oh,
superintendent.
okay, and we saw him on a copy of the letter back a couple of slides back. So, okay, now we know. So Russ Segner, back to you.
Well,
Russ, let's talk about your model railroad here for a few minutes. We're coming to the end of our
Sure.
yeah. So where is this? Tell us a little bit about it, your design, kind of, let's go into a little more detail about what we've got here.
Well, this is the main yard on my little layout. And a couple of things I'll mention. You can see the sloping ceiling, which made this room very awkward because you couldn't use vertical buildings in the backdrop and so on. But in any case, this is my main town, Coal Creek. And my layout mimics an extension of the railroad from Morton up into this area. My theory is that the narrow gauge was promulgated from up through Utah and up over White Pass into Morton. And because my the yard at the other end of this is the little town of Morton, which is my interchange with the outside world.
Is this
So,
ON 30?
Pardon?
Is this ON 30?
No, it's S scale, narrow
Oh.
gauge.
Oh, okay.
And so it's 3 foot between the rails. It mimics in a lot of ways HO in terms of the size you need to operate. And the cars are equivalent, pretty close to HO rolling stock, but they're actually S scale.
So I see an industry way in the background by the corner, and then I see one up here in the foreground. What are those?
Well, the one at the very far corner is I call it Chambers Industries. It's a building that fabricates and repairs logging machinery. And so all of the industries on my layout are designed to interact with other industries on the layout. And that one has a track into the interior, which is complete. I've got an overhead crane and all of that inside that building and lights.
How often,
There's
I missed the last operating session, and you could always invite me back again sometime.
well, I'm actually going to start doing that around the first of the year. I've
Okay,
had quite a hiatus. As it turns out, a lot of our guys that I've worked with for many years have sort of aged out of the scheme of things, and I've lost several of the guys who were active with me. They're just not here anymore.
understood.
So
What's
I'm trying
the,
to build up a brand new crew.
What's
And
the
I had a guy yesterday over who was a retired Boeing guy, but he's 20 years younger than me. And so he's able to get underneath the layout to help me make some repairs. I can get down there, but it's hard to get back up.
It's hard to get back up again. I know with the
Oh,
encroaching
yeah.
age. Yeah, I get
But
that.
anyway, off to the right, there is my engine servicing facility.
Oh, okay.
There's a coal loading facility on that racetrack and an ash track. You can see the guy with the shovel.
Yeah.
And then there's the fuel depot oil for inbound shipments, and then the standpipe for to feed the oil into the tenders of the locomotives.
So
I
you're
have
all
both
oil
coal
burner.
operated and oil operated logging locomotives.
Okay.
what's
On my
that
layout,
gong?
everything from the right, which is to Morton, comes in with rod locomotives, and they are turned here, serviced, and sent back out. Everything from here on up to the end of the line is operated with geared locomotives, and that includes Shays, Climaxes, and Heislers.
Okay. Let's see what else we've got. Where are we now?
That's around the corner. This is my logging mill
Beautiful.
that is one of the main industries on the layout. And you can see the dump track in the background there. And then storage for dried lumber over on the right.
Looks
It's a
like
band mill which
Okay.
I have all of the machinery, but I haven't really built them and put them in the interior of the building.
Yeah, that's lovely. So you're shipping out cut lumber and bringing in logs, it looks like.
Yes, and most of the material that's cut there is used in the mines. So most of the timbers are the smallest would be like a 4x4, but typically they would be 6x10s or larger. And
Are both of those locomotive shays?
the one on the left is a Shay. The one on the right is a Heisler,
Okay,
the little red Heisler.
yeah.
Yeah, I got to visit Russ just a little over a year ago, Russ. I was out to your house and got a few of these pictures.
Yeah,
So this is mill sort, it looks like, and then you've got mill duck. Am I looking at your fascia board correctly?
yeah. Well, these are the names of the spots
Okay.
on the layout. And in this little area, I have switching that would be involved in moving the cars around between the finished lumber and the storage. And then on the left, there's in addition to the log dump, by the building, which is our dispatch for this, is a spur that handles oil, bulk oil for firing the boilers in the mill.
Okay. You scratch built this, I would assume.
Yes,
Wow.
it was inspired by a mill down in the Converse Basin in California near uh, oh, good grief. Anyway, down near the West Side Lumber Company. All of my locomotives are really West Side Lumber Company locomotives.
Okay.
And my theory is that we bought the stuff from the West Side when it was having tough times.
And
How
and
did you get these locomotives? Were they ready made?
Yes, these are built by and imported by PBL down in
Oh, yeah.
California. They're all built in Taiwan and Korea.
Yeah, nice looking engines.
They're a very, very lovely, well-detailed locomotives.
and they run
Uh,
good too, don't they?
Pardon?
They run well.
Oh, extremely, yes. They're sort of the top of the line in many ways of model railroading. Because of that, they're not inexpensive.
Mhm.
But I can't say I did anything to them other than some weathering and just run them on the railroad.
We've got a couple more pictures of your
Okay.
layout left.
There's one of the Shays, which this Shay has quite a history. It was originally built for the New Mexico Lumber Company in Colorado and was ultimately sold to the West Side as their number 12. Runs beautifully. It's got sound, and they're all equipped with decoders so that I can run all of the locomotives independently. And here
What-
you see the trackage at my location called Bunkers, and there's a switchback here that comes out of the yard, goes up to the right, and then back up to the left. That serves one of my loading areas for ore at a spot called Ellerby Mines.
Are the couplers HO? Because Katie
They're
actually
HO number, yeah, they're typically HO.
okay.
yeah. And CLC is what railroad, Russ?
That's Coal Creek Lumber Company.
Ah, yes. I want to make sure I got that into the credits. So,
Yeah.
and then a couple of stock cars too. So you're moving.
Yeah, well, I have a stock pen at the end of the line up at Tiger Mountain,
Oh,
and the stock that's moved up there are sheep that are taken up in the spring so that they pasture in the mountains, and then they're brought down in the fall. And I had to have sheep because my wife is a knitter, and so I've got a wool house on the railroad at Coal Creek. One of the Milwaukee businesses that was very busy in Montana were wool houses.
Yeah.
And we handled an awful lot of livestock over there. We
And-
always just kidded ourselves because every year we'd have to account for the livestock that we killed on the railroad
Oh,
because the fences weren't maintained properly.
oh,
And we calculated that it cost, many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year
Hmm.
in livestock claims.
yeah. George could tell us a story about livestock claims, but not today. So,
That's right.
so then what's this flat car with these tanks at the left-hand side?
Those are lubricants for the sawmill operations or the cutting areas. There'd be gasoline and kerosene and other light oil in those 3 tanks.
Okay.
Did you develop this from photos, the flat car, or did you, like a lot of things in
That's a
narrow
real
gauge
car
railroading?
on the west side. They had a car like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Wow.
just wonder if there's a history behind it.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
is.
that's neat.
It's moving
So
on.
most of the layout is inspired by the west side and other areas I'm sort of familiar with from photographs.
And then where are we here?
This is the at the midpoint bunkers. I expanded it to include a little town called Mineral, and that gave me several other industries to switch. So there's a depot and a lumber distributor, hardware store, and the mine there in the background is just consolidated mines.
What kind of mining is that?
It's all ore of uh, different types
Oh,
of minerals.
like
Um,
lead and things like that? Or
something similar to copper mining, basically.
okay, all right.
I tell people that the bunker that is at the top of the stairs. I've got pictures I could share with you later. An ore called moosite, which was used in processing of beer because it helped clarify the product.
It's a very
Wow.
important item. So,
Yeah,
Certainly was.
yeah. So Russ, how long did you work for the Milwaukee Road, and then what happened?
5 years.
Okay.
Uh, excuse me.
Bless you.
The problem was I was quite happy out here, had a sailboat and a family and all that. And Ed Stoll, the head director of the railroad, transferred me to Chicago. It was one of those things where you were invited to move. And they gave me a $200 a month raise and a title change. And that was supposed to take care of the process. Well, I went back to Milwaukee for 10 days and stayed in a hotel down at the Loop and looked over the area west of Milwaukee, out along Fox River and all that for housing and so on. But I couldn't find anything that really turned me on at all. Most of it
Okay.
turned me off big time.
Okay.
And so I told Ed that I really didn't want to stay and I wanted to be transferred back to Chicago, to Milwaukee, to Seattle. And that was not possible because they had filled the position already. So I resigned.
Wow. Well, actually, I should mention that the article in the Milwaukee Railroader was written by E.J. Stoll, and so he was your boss, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
He headed up the whole department back in Chicago. And it was, I don't know whether any of you were familiar with the offices back there, but it was on the upper story of the main building there. And there were like 40 desks out in a giant open room. And along one side of were the offices with windows to the outside. And Ed's was one of those. and above the door to his office there was a squawk box. And I'm there meeting, talking to other people, and Ed's voice booms out on that box. Said to one of the guys, and a guy that had been transferred 15 years earlier from Seattle to there. I can't recall his name, but Ed called his name and said, "So and so, bring the blankety blank file into my office." And honestly, the collegiate atmosphere in Seattle was so nice. Everybody was very friendly and interacted very casually. This was different. And so I realized that that was not going to be my cup of tea very long. So that was part of my decision to move back.
So then you moved back to Seattle, no job. What did you do then?
Fortunately, I worked for the guy who had started up the inspection business for Transamerica Title. He was one of my guys at the land survey company.
Oh,
So he hired me right away, and I worked there for a year. And then I decided that my experience with the Kent property, for instance, Jack Sprague, who put
yeah, I
that
saw that
package
name in
together,
there.
made
Yeah.
a huge commission on that property. And I thought,
Industrial real
industrial
estate
real
firm.
estate brokerage is not a bad deal. And so I quit and went to work for Weston Wheeler in Seattle as a industrial real estate broker. And I stayed in that business for some 40 years.
So,
Ultimately got involved in my own company and built a bunch of stuff and so on.
so what would be some of, because I would think your familiarity with the Kent Valley might have been some good hunting grounds for your commercial real estate career. What would be some of your big projects?
Well, it was perfect because I knew a lot of the developers from the work with the railroad, and I knew an awful lot of the land and a lot of the businesses down there. So one of them at 212th rather, and where the Milwaukee Union Pacific crosses 212th, on the east side of that intersection is Flow Research, or was, and now I think that's where Blue Origin is.
Yep.
And but across the street was a set of warehouses owned by United Warehouses at the time. Those guys turned out to be clients of mine because they owned property in Seattle at 6th and Holgate, or 6th and Lucille.
Oh, yeah.
But helped them develop that property, and we put trackage down into the warehouse and so on. That track never had a boxcar on it. It was never used. It was the spur and the second turnout and a storage track, and it was never used. It was fitted out with relay rail. And then I subsequently sold that property as a broker to another company, and they lifted the rail and the turnout and so on. But that was one of my projects that was very interesting, and I sold their property at 6th and Lucille as well.
Yeah, down in Georgetown.
Down in Georgetown. Did a number of buildings in Georgetown. Had a company that was in the electrical motor business. They built and rebuilt all of the motors for Weyerhaeuser.
Oh, okay.
And they were a very good client. I did like 4 transactions with them ultimately, and built the property up in Linwood for them.
Okay.
It was a great experience because I ended up in the development business and built, I don't know, 7 buildings over my career.
Okay.
Several of which we owned and managed.
Oh,
And then about 5 years ago, sold everything.
oh, okay. Yeah, well,
So no phone calls on the weekend.
Yeah, I was getting ready for church the other Sunday, and the alarm and at 3:30 in the morning, the phone goes off, and it's the alarm company calling me saying we've got an intruder in the building. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I play that. I'm looking forward to unloading the building that I have to manage because I don't want to manage it either anymore.
Now that, well, one reason I got into commercial real estate was I didn't want to work evenings and weekends.
I'm
And
not coming over to fix some lady's washing machine because she plugged it up, Yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
I never sold as a real estate agent a residence.
You never worked
Always,
residential, always commercial.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and a very successful career. So this has been great. So we're going to just wrap up. I got a couple of credits left, and we're going to come to the end of our program for today. And I don't know, folks of the future, I hope you're enjoying this as much as the people here in the present are enjoying today's program. This has been fun, spending some time with Russ and getting to know him and talking about his project and how it's interesting from a railroad perspective. It's just interesting from the development of the Puget Sound. So you could watch today's program in the future on YouTube. In fact, this will go up on YouTube later this afternoon. Russ, I'll send you guys a link and you can watch the program. And like I say, you have 100% editorial control. If there's something you want me to change or edit, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that. I want to thank our researchers, Aaron Schwartz at Cascade Rail Foundation, for making available the Jerry Schrader collection. The image here on the left is from the Jerry Schrader collection, and I believe they used that on opening day. George Foster, what's the problem with that picture?
Oh, okay. Let's see here where we got it.
We got a spelling problem, don't we?
Yep. So
Marshalling has two L's, George tells me.
yeah, I looked it up and I was thinking when I look at words, I try to remember how they were when I read them before. And marshaling in this particular case has two L's, although some other uh, words that have one consonant, before the ing portion. So uh, maybe this was the way it was spelled back then, and that's what they used. But I looked it up to see if that, because it didn't look quite right to me. But I'm just really picky.
There you
Um,
go. So, and then the deacons or the bishops, as I like to call them today, Alan Miller, George Foster, Dave Sprau. I chipped in a few things from my own collection. I produced this program for Cascade Rail Foundation. This is a Cascade Rail Foundation presentation. And I want to just say so long, everybody, and thanks for watching. And here's a picture of the train crew on that day on October 1st, 1969, when the railroad christened their facility. This is in downtown Seattle at the Freight House. So,
you
yeah,
notice that one guy's wearing the obligatory Homburg. A lot of railroad officials wore back then.
Yeah.
yeah, these guys actually were the train crew that day, and Mr.
Yeah.
Schrader was a brakeman, and he's the tall fellow on the far right. So,
Wow.
Wow.
yeah, that's quite something. So
Looks like they stair stepped up.
I think probably somebody thought about what they were doing there. So anyway, Dave Sprau, you stayed awake the whole time? Well, he's muted. Good thing we came
Yeah,
back on camera and he wasn't like napping.
yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Any comments before I let you go, Dave? You got any thoughts for us?
Well, not to be picky-unish, but I think for the people that don't live around Washington State, we should clarify. Russ commented that this facility was south of Tacoma Junction, where the PC and the NP and the UP all came together. Actually, I think Russ meant Black River.
Right. He did.
Oh, you're right. Oh,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew I could count on Dave for a good technical correction on that. Any other thoughts from our audience today before we move on, George?
Yeah, so the someone asked about I think earlier that I think it was you, and you asked Dave about issuing train orders onto the Milwaukee for westbound. So typically, except for the Valley Owl, they'd already have orders to go back and forth. but westbound Milwaukee trains, using the joint line, would do what I was commenting before. They would ask to come to Black River on the against the current of traffic, and then as I gave them a signal through the plant, they would go through the crossover in front of the tower to orient them to the correct current of traffic. But in so doing, we had this clothesline device that was from the second floor, and we'd put a hoop in the bracket on the upper bracket of the line, and then that would contain the orders. And then anybody that was whatever engineer was on that particular train, he'd just walk across the cab and reach through the string and snag the orders, and he was done. And then he'd walk back over and sit in the seat.
There you
That was,
go.
yeah. One other thing too from yesterday, I was talking uh, to him about the angle of the photo there above Glover. So
Right.
this is my version.
Okay.
Yep.
Taken from the bridge. That was yesterday's program on the Union Pacific and the Blue Mountains, which was a PNRA Cascade Rail Foundation program.
Mr. Bob.
No,
So, Alan, go
uh,
ahead, please.
when I was working at Kent one time, I had a motorcycle. It was a street legal dirt bike, Yamaha DT 400, and I would ride it to work sometimes. So I had to go down and check the yard at West Siding real quick. So I took the bike down there because I could take it between the rails instead of having to walk it. I could just ride it down through there and get my yard check done. So I was done and I was heading back out of there on the gravel road, and this car pulled crossways across the road and blocked me. And I got up there, and it was a Milwaukee police force guy. And so when I took my helmet off, then he recognized me as who I was. And he's like, "What are you doing down here?" And I says, "I'm checking the yard." And he said, "Well, what's this?" And I said, "This is our new company car." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, we were given a choice of a new company car. And so we picked this dirt bike so that we could use it on weekends to go ratting around in the woods." And he starts yelling at me and saying, "You're not using a company vehicle for personal stuff, you know." And then I had to tell him, "No, it's my bike. I just used it down here to check the yard." But he was buying that. I thought, I wish I would have had a couple Milwaukee Road logos to stick on both sides of the
Oh
gas
my,
tank.
that would have been something.
He
Yeah.
would have really bought the story, but
So one thing, we're going to wrap up here in just a second. So the one thing I do want to mention, when Alan went down to check the cars, he was checking the freight cars, not the Pontiacs or the Thunderbirds. Okay.
well, we were told that there was a crazy guy down there that would get in the automobiles and pretend he was driving them. And so we were warned when we went to check the yard to look out for this guy. And I went down there one night, and there was a horn was beeping on a van on one of the auto racks. So I climbed up there and I worked my way across there until I got up to the car, and I looked in the window, and there was nobody in there. The horn was just shorting out or something. So I looked, and the passenger side window was all busted out. So I got in there and I fiddled around with the horn on the steering wheel, and it wasn't stuck, so I couldn't get it to stop. So I popped the hood, and when I looked in there, the wiring was all torn out of the headlight areas and stuff. So I took the wire off of the horn, and that stopped it. And then I went and made a report and sent it in and included the Milwaukee Police Department in Seattle about it. And I don't know, a week or so later, the Milwaukee cop was out there doing something, and I asked him if he got my report. And he said, "Yeah, I'm the guy that did that." He says, "How did you get that horn to stop?" He says, "I pulled every wire I could find out of that thing, and it wouldn't stop." And I said, "Well," I says, "a blind man could find the horn. You just got to feel the vibration, and then you just pull the wire off of that." And I said, "You did all that damage?" "Yeah." And I said, "Do you
What?
realize how much money you cost?" I says, "If you just left the car there, all that would have happened was the battery would have went dead. And
Charge
when
the
they
battery, it
unloaded
would
it,
have
they
been
would have had
fine.
to jump start it. And when they jump started, they realized the horn was stuck. But man, here he was a Milwaukee policeman, and he just smashed the heck out of that vehicle just because of a horn."
Well, there you
I
go.
had that comment earlier about Ford, and I said that they were over on the BN side of the valley.
Hmm.
So in the diagram that Alan drew, Ford was accounted for there. Do you know what year they might have switched over, Alan?
I don't know. I've been in Kent in '74 and they were there then.
Uh-huh.
Hey,
Yeah, I
Jonathan,
was surprised. I didn't know that
And
there was
they
an auto
and
facility
yeah, and
for
they
them.
handled Jeeps down there too, because I recall a time where somebody went down there and they cut the wire fence and stole about 3 or 4 Jeeps.
Wow.
And they found them up on Tiger Mountain about 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Is that for that facility north of 180th on the BN?
I have no idea. I was just told that by people that live up there. I haven't lived in the area up there since '86. So uh, after I came to Oregon, then I talked to friends of mine that I worked with up there, but they tell me, well, here's the changes that have been made if I ask questions about it. Because at first I thought that UP and Milwaukee had exclusivity basically for the whole uh, valley there, and of course, into Seattle or wherever, but I don't know.
Well, there is a real auto rack yard north of 180th, about 4 blocks,
Okay.
Orilla?
and
Aurelia?
yeah,
Yeah,
up in that,
probably. What a great name.
yeah.
So one more anecdote before I let you all go, and this is from the article by E.J. Ed Stoll, Russ's boss. The very first rail car that was supposed to arrive in this facility was a Union Pacific car, because remember, the Union Pacific exercised their rights to be able to use the facility too. And that was considered to be positive by the part of the car companies, is that Milwaukee and UP were going to be using this. So the very first car was a UP car that originated in California. However, when it got to West Siding, the Milwaukee Division Superintendent refused to allow it on the tracks because the UP hadn't paid for the exercise of their option. So they're out there trying to switch this car, and the division superintendent says, "No way, you haven't paid yet."
Was that an auto rack, by the way, just to make sure,
It,
clarify?
it doesn't say, it just says the first rail car. So
I
anyway, Ed
I think
Stoll,
what
go ahead.
people I think what people forget or that are not knowledgeable about it anyway is that the flat car is owned by TTX, but
Yeah.
the rack itself is owned by the individual railroads and leased to the car company or whatever to for the transportation of the cars.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, Ed Stoll sent a wire telegram to somebody, and the Union Pacific wired the money while the car was sitting out there waiting to be spotted. So I just wanted to finish on that note. So thanks again to our special guest today. We're going to wrap up now. Russ Segner. Russ, thank you for being here. Alan and George and Dave Sprau, long-suffering Dave Sprau. Always good to have you. And I want to thank everybody. And I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do is stop.